Start.
Here we go. When I went to my second Pennsic, there was this huge town battle laid out. And I was an super enthusiastic newbie, and I ran around and I killed a bunch of people and I had a blast. And then what I heard, and then like the community discussed it, and all of these new facets came out. And I heard, you know, some people had a great time, some people had a bad time. This is great, this was horrible. And it has been, for 14 years, the most contentious topic and the most, like, hugely diverse and kind of divisive perspectives. And as one of our panelists, Brighid, said, you do not talk about the D&D town battle. So we're going to talk about the D&D town battle. I'm Wistrick.
I'm Bruce. And this is Fighting the World, special episode in honor of virtual Pennsic, the D&D town battle. We've made jokes about this for 5 episodes now, and we figured we might as well get it over with before we crack any more jokes about things we don't know what we're talking about. All right, Wistrick, you want to take it away with the intro?
Sure.
Or was that your intro?
Well, that was my intro. Now I have a panelist introduction. So I already mentioned Maestra Brighid, who was at that time Mid-Realm Special Tasks Commander. Actually, you all can introduce yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was
First.
handed the mic to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Maestra Brighid. At the time of this battle, I was on the command staff, and I was in charge of a special unit that was specifically designed for this melee, almost, to get the deliverables organized and completed in a way that would allow us to at least break even, if not maybe hopefully win. We were very outnumbered, so a lot of it was coming down to how can we do the most maximum amount of deliverables and tactics during the res in order to make some headway and give a challenge to the East Atlantia Ethelmark contingency.
We're really hoping that she will give us some crazy awesome perspective on what that means, because as a lawyer, mundanely, deliverables makes me go, ugh. So we're gonna go to our next panelist. Dorinda, do you mind introducing ourselves? Who are you? Any applicable titles? And what were you doing at this battle? What kingdom were you in? What were you in charge of?
What were any of us doing at this battle? I think that's the question we need to ask. I am Duchess Dorinda, and I believe this particular year I had just stepped down as being in command of the Ethelmark army. So I am going to be speaking to you as not just someone who was not in command, but someone who was not in command from an ally. I am from Ethelmark. And so as people passed down jobs and rules from this melee, on tin cans with strings in between them, I was the end of that line. And so that is the perspective that I'm going to bring you this evening.
All right, well, we've heard from the Mid-Realm, who is a principal. We've heard from Ethelmark, who is not. Let's jump over to the East next.
We still have one more mid-realm.
I know, I'm gonna get there.
Okay.
So I guess that's me.
That is you, Antonio. Would you?
Hi, I'm Antonio. I am a Master of Defense, a Knight, and a Pelican. Perhaps importantly, I was none of those things at that fateful Pennsic when I was Kingdom Rapier Marshal of the East and Marshal in charge of Pennsic that year.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So,
Everybody drink.
I was involved in designing the town battle. Not all of it, but in those negotiations. And that day I was senior marshal on the field. So most of my perspective will be before the battle and after the battle. And actually what was going on in the field, I look forward to hearing from all of you.
So it's your fault? Is that what we're saying?
Among the people whose fault it is, I was one of them.
Oh.
He was in the room where it happened.
All right, so we've heard from 2 principals, and we have 3 of the non-principal kingdoms. No dog in the fight, as we like to say on this podcast, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to jump over next to Dom, who is from Atlantia and can give us a little bit of background of what he was doing there.
So I'm Master Dominyk Wolfram from Atlantia. I'm currently in Radiates, but I play mostly in Atlantia. At that time, I also was I had very few titles at that point. At this point, I was a runner and a gunner, a fire and forget weapon, and that is the role that I played in this melee. So I'm gonna be bringing perspective from the chaos that was the fighting in the middle of it. I was not involved in the planning. So this is gonna be a lot of new stuff for me too.
Well, I can't wait to hear about that because we actually have someone who is in command of a small unit with us from one of the non-principals. And so I'm going to jump to Arnaz next.
Hi, I'm Baroness Arnaz, and back then I was in Trimaris. And Trimaris is not one of the principal kingdoms at Pennsic, but we are a principal kingdom at Gulf Wars. So we understand how to train and organize your kingdom for a war. But Pennsic is our vacation war. And that year we happened to have a queen who was recently authorized in Rapier who wanted to be on the battle. And we happened to find matching royal tabards for the rest of us. And everyone who showed up there from Trimaris, there was about 12 of us, and we knew how to work together and we knew how to form a unit. And so we could accomplish tasks. So I was not quite all the way at the end of the tin can word of mouth. I was maybe a little bit more in the middle in that I had to pass on information to my queen and to the rest of the kingdom. And we had some specific tasks, but yeah, so I can bring that perspective as well.
Excellent. All right, and then last but not least, right? I count good. I'm not here for the counting. Last but not least is going to be Anton from the Mid-Realm, who is not in charge of a special unit. So he might be able to give us a little bit more of a general perspective on what
He knows
happened.
what happened on the line.
I am here for comic relief because it turns out this was also my second Pennsic. I showed up with ideas, like I was gonna be. I didn't need anybody to look at me and think, "Oh, that's D'Artagnan." No, I was just gonna look the part. Had my hat. I was great. We were gonna go stab some fools. I'm an old hand now. Heck, this is my second Pennsic. I mean, I've seen Pennsic melee. I've been as far down the hill as Vlad's. I've walked past Barducci's. I'm an old hand at this. There's nothing new gonna surprise me.
Oh, you went past.
Okay, Anton, what's your name? What's your title?
I am Master Anton. I am, in this battle, I was no one of consequence. I was in training to be the Midlands XO because our regional commander, well, had no idea what we were doing, and so I went to the command staff meetings. So the cool part was I was there in the command staff meetings, but other than that, I was there really to stab people. That was my plan.
And who are you today?
Oh, me? No, consequence. I'm Master Anton. I retired from all my military stuff. I used to be I was a Mid-Realm Rapier commander general for a while.
All right, I'll let you off the hook. But as you can see, we have a variety of people who were involved in a variety of ways. And I know Wistrick, who is my co-shenanigator, was looking forward to piping up as I think this was his first Pennsic?
Second.
Oh, so you
I
and
said that in the
Anton.
intro, but
I don't listen to you.
yeah, no. So like it was great. Like I said, as an enthusiastic newbie, it was great. But also, my future peer was the Atlantean commander. So I've heard many things over the years from her. Anytime I bring this up, and anytime I say how great it is, she glares at me. So again, it's like I call it. It's like the great Rashomon of SCA Rapier because so many people had such different perspectives.
That is a great way to phrase it. The Rashomon of Atlantic Rapier, yeah, very good.
All right, so now that we've introduced everyone, let's get this party started. Because this is in part of the virtual Pennsic lineup, the first thing I kind of wanted to ask the panelists is to outline why this was a thing. What happens with Pennsic? How do we organize and choose what melees we're going to fight? I'd like some context about the time period, which I'm guessing Antonio can give me after his intro. I'd like to talk a little bit about negotiations, which a lot of people don't know very much about behind the scenes, which Brighid just raised her hand for. And then finally, we kind of want to talk about that map, which is going to be Wistrick popping it up on the screen for us. But first things first, I want to ask Antonio, and I'm going to start with him, but we'll go to the rest of the panel as we illustrate the bigger picture. Why was this the thing? What happened? What was going on with that Pennsic? Who were the crowns? Like, give us your knowledge, Antonio.
Oh, well. I think it's right out the gate, it's important to note that the answer to all of the questions you just asked are very different now from what they were then.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone recall how many years we had been doing melee war points prior to the town battle?
Not many.
Yes.
I agree. I don't think it was very long.
I
It
believe
was-
this was year 3.
Yeah, this had to be year 3 because Moira was general, and we
Sounds
did
right.
2-year terms.
Yep.
So it was Max for 2, then Moira. This was Moira's.
So I'm going to try not to speak for the mid because they evolved very differently from the East. But from my viewpoint, the fencing community received battles and then had to build a command staff. And that's backwards. Perhaps it was unavoidable, but certainly a culture of melee command did not exist in the East, nor was there very good communication and cross-pollination between the Rapier community and the heavy community, who presumably did have that knowledge. This is important because when we got into negotiations, at least in the East, there had not yet been a separation between marshalate and command. So I didn't appreciate when I was in the position of negotiating this, just how different those positions were and how their goals conflicted.
Explain that a little bit, though. Talk about
Sure.
how they had it better. How the heavy fighters had it more established.
Well, the heavy fighters, had a command staff. They had armies organized. Those armies had commanders. There was a warlord, who reported directly to the king. Brighid?
No, continue your line of thought. I raised my hand as waning in line.
Okay.
Keep talking.
So, when we say command structure today and understand it as, a detailed organization on the Rapier side that, organizes and runs the Rapier army, that didn't exist back then, at least in the East. It did exist on the heavy list side. What didn't really exist was a communication between the communities, but be a sense in the East that we really needed anything beyond a commander of the army and the commanders of the dozen or so households and units that we were going to field. The structure of commander and subcommanders and regional commanders and the communication between the senior commanders and the king and warlord didn't really exist at this point. And that plays into how we got the map. the mat, and
Oh.
so I'll let me roll right into that, and then I'll let Brighid burst with everything she's bursting with.
She's about to burst up.
She is.
I will also let you know that Brigid's memory of this is far better than mine, so I will defer to her on a lot of the details. We were handed this map by the royalty. I believe the Eastern Crown was Lucan. I believe he designed this, and it was supposed to be based on a historical event. Maybe it was supposed to be Constantinople. My recollection is it was modeled on an actual city and an actual battle.
I remember hearing that also, and this was the same field that the heavy weapons were using right after us too, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And it was like that for the first few years. The heavies would work out their scenarios and then turn to the fencers and say, here are the fields you're working with, or here's the field you're working with, because back then we had a field battle and a woods battle. You know, that was it. So we were handed this map and said, you know, here's where you're fighting. And that immediately presents a couple of issues for Rapier. I'm sorry?
A couple, really?
Well, the big picture issues, I think, is one, a map that's designed to be fun for 500 to 600 fighters is not going to work the same way for 200 fencers.
Right.
You know, exciting choke points and control positions aren't going to exist when you have people running willy-nilly around a map that's way too big for them. So the first thing we had to do was figure out how to adapt how to adapt this map for use by a limited number of people. And I think we limited the field. For instance, I don't remember having a ship on our map. Brighid,
No, the ship was there.
It was there.
well, okay.
The ship was there.
Did we use it?
It was abridged. When we got around to, so the problem is that we build these scenarios and they look really nice on paper, and then we rely on like overworked volunteers to haul around hay bales and recreate this nonsense, and it does not work. Like it's just not fair to those battlefield coordinators. I'm pretty sure we were missing like a room or two, and that ornate thing out to the ship just didn't work quite like that either.
It did not look like that when you walked into it. It really didn't.
And of course you're walking into it. You're not floating, 50 feet above it, which makes a big difference.
I do remember that this wall down here was closed, just so that there wouldn't be a full-on battle down here in the bottom corner.
That's true. That's true. That was not
Mid-realm
open.
required that. We would have just been back to our res point and not been able to enter. So we had to have something.
Yeah, that wasn't there.
So, okay. So we've gotten some of the background here, which is basically this was in the infancy of Rapier as a war point at Pennsic. This was the third year.
Yes.
There was not the infrastructure there is today, because I can tell you from what I'm hearing from Antonio, this is not how we do things anymore behind the scenes. We play test them, etc. I'm going to jump over to Brighid because she raised her hand.
Hold on one second.
Raise my hand.
One thing. Wasn't this fought Epee?
No, this was not fought Epee. I'm actually about to bring up that point though.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
So we don't necessarily need the map for this part of the discussion, but yeah. So anyway, I'm going to go back to how this started on the mid-realm side, because it's actually kind of important to this story. The Middle Kingdom, like the Middle Kingdom in the East, shared the war point for Rapier was a half a war point that was the Champions Tournament. And we shared that half a war point, I think, with archery. And so one year, and I'm going to get into this real quick in a moment, we found out that we had war points because our Kingdom Rapier Marshal, Maximilian Dzabur, Max, had gotten onto the Legio Draconis bulletin board system, the forum for Darkyard. And he saw a note saying that there were going to be Rapier war points. And this was fucking news to us. Like, we had no idea. And he came to us and said, there's a war point and we're fighting it epee. This was the first year, by the way. And we were like, what? We're not even allowed to fight epee. Like, epee is an outlawed style in the Middle Kingdom, which was outlawed a long time before this even happened. And so at that first war point, I actually was involved in the heavy Rattan command staff before Rapier got war points. And so I was what was called the Kingdom Scout Commander. And this was actually like a role on the battlefield that used to be a thing. You were a non-combatant and people could walk within 10 feet of you and say, Scout, you're dead. And if you like were able to like scurry your little butt behind a friendly fighter before they said, Scout, you're dead, you're like, nah, and you just like run away, okay? And so your job was to go and find all of the information on the battlefield and get it back to the commander. For instance, in the woods, I would walk around and find where the 3 banners were. I would find where various units were. My job was to know heraldry. My job was to know all of this stuff. And then I would walk around, I would count all the troops on the opposite side before every battle. Sometimes I'd wear a cute little cohorty and like, be like, oh, hey, how many units are how many people are in your unit? The general needs to know. And they'd be like, oh, 57. I'd be like, great, thank you. And then I'd walk back to our side and be like, here's the troop tally. And so when Rapier got war points, Max came to me and said, hey, I don't know what we need. And I don't know how to run a war point. And I don't know what's even going on. I'm KRM. And so he said, can you be our scout commander for Rapier also? Which isn't really a thing. There's no scouts, there's no non-combatants in Rapier. But basically it meant that I was in charge of getting all of the intelligence on the field, organizing all of the deliverables, and making sure we kept our time. If there was time checks, I had a stopwatch on me. I always had a clipboard. I always had a rolled up map. And I was the person in charge of all of that information. So when it came down to the woods battle, or the D&D town battle, and Moira was the next general, Moira came to me and said, oh my God, we need a unit to take care of all of this. And so our background coming into this was that we didn't have any idea how to build a command staff either. But what we did have was we leaned very heavily on the Rattan command staff. We leaned very heavily on General Strom. And this actually happened in an interesting point in time in the Middle Kingdom where the command staff for Rattan was going through a major renaissance. And so we actually had those people coming in, bringing us in at full level, like Rapier generals and whatnot, and bringing us into what they were doing. So that's kind of my counter to Antonio's what happened in the command staff.
Which was, you took the situation and you tried to make the best of it with the knowledge we had, right? That's
Yes.
kind of what it sounds like all around, which is basically trying to salvage something that you're handed. For background for our audience, the way that Pennsic is handled nowadays is very different. Both the East and the Mid have a command structure with many redundancies. We work very closely with the crowns during negotiations to find games that will be fun, fair, winnable, spicy. Yeah, okay. Brigid.
You already talked.
So I know, I'm gonna talk a lot, I'm very sorry.
You're not sorry. You're not sorry.
I'm totally not sorry. Everyone here knows me. They know it, but I'm not sorry. The really interesting thing that most people don't understand about Pennsic negotiations is literally everything is on the table. Everything. It can be my queen gets to host the queen's tea. It can be we're going to be hosting state dinner out of sequence. It can be we will the reason that the mid-realm and the east fought epee for their first rapier battle actually was because the king at the time, who's currently actually the king of the mid-realm, the king at the time had wanted the near entrance to the woods. Because if you get the near entrance to the woods, you're going to get more of your rattan fighters willing to actually show up to the battle. It's a more gentle slope in the old woods. It's not as hard of a res. It's a lot easier to get to the battle. So if you are determined that you want to win the woods, you want to negotiate something that's going to give you that near entrance. So in that case, they were like, hey, what can we trade away for this? And East Mercedes was like, hey, we could fight this with epee because we still have people who fight epee. We didn't. So literally everything is on the table for negotiations that doesn't even seem congruent or to make sense or related, because it doesn't even have to be related. Nope. It's just a huge, huge thing when you come to the Pennsic negotiating table.
Yep. And even nowadays, it's rules. It's every little part gets argued. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it, but also mundanely, I'm a lawyer and a little bit of a masochist. So,
I enjoyed it when I was general.
A little bit.
It was a good time.
A little bit, this much. So, all right. So now that we have the background and we have a little bit of context of what Pennsic looks like now versus what it looked like then versus how scenarios came to the table, the next question for the panelists and for Wistrick to pop the map up is, what was the scenario? So we know that there were 3 runs of this battle. What was the basic gist of it? Please, just general overview, not what your unit did yet. We'll get there, I promise. But just, can you give us the, like, run 1 was this, run 2 was this, run 3 was this? Who's got the best memory here?
I remember 1 and 3. Run 1, which you can kind of see on the map, each room in the map has a little red dot and a little blue dot. And they were a beanbag. And every single room had a beanbag. And if you ended up getting the majority of your beanbags back to res first, then you would win the scenario. For that
I beg your
first
pardon,
battle.
Brighid. I'm sorry to interrupt. In the link that Bruce posted in chat, there's actually the description from the handbook, which I'm going to try to paste into chat.
Okay.
Okay.
So everyone can either try to, yeah, it looks like it didn't take all the text, but if everyone clicks that link and scrolls down a bit, you'll see the actual descriptions.
Yes, I'm combining scenario 1 and scenario 2.
Scenario 2.
Scenario 1 was collect everything. Scenario 2 was distribute it.
Yep.
So I didn't want to read these aloud, but I had them pulled up just so that I could make sure to, I won't say fact check, but so that we could get the whole picture. So from your recollections, you're combining 1 and 2, which might explain why you're only remembering 2 of them. So,
correct.
Go ahead and read. Go ahead and read. Go ahead and read.
Go read it. Read it.
Do you want me to read it? All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So scenario 1 was to collect the taxes. Each building will have 3 bags of gold. Teams score 1 point for every bag that they collect and return to their starting point by the end of combat. Wistrick, thank you for demonstrating. Fencers may fight while carrying a bag, but may not use the bag as a parrying item. That was probably negotiated. This is a non-resurrection battle that will end when one team has been eliminated or all the gold has been retrieved. Pennsic rules heavy rapier only. DFB is active. Scenario 2. Distribute the wealth to the poor. Each team will have an equal quantity of bags of gold marked in their colors that must be distributed to buildings throughout the field. Teams will get points for bags successfully delivered at the end of time, with more points awarded for bags delivered furthest from the team's starting line. If a bag is left unattended, it may be moved by the opposing team. Ooh, that's rude. This is a 20-minute resurrection battle. Pennsic rules, heavy rapier only, DFB will be used. And scenario number 3, which I've heard horror stories from, is the drunken courier's deliveries. Each team will begin with a number of items that must be delivered to specific buildings. The team with the most items delivered to the correct buildings wins. Teams may not move items belonging to the opposite team. This is a 20-minute resurrection battle. Pennsic rules, heavy rapier only, and DFB will be used.
Now,
all of those numbers on the buildings indicate which building it was that things had to get delivered to.
And we made signs. We made signs on posts.
We have demonstrations.
I made signs on posts.
Antonio, talk about how you set it up. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there it is. God, how did I don't even recall how I came to make those.
That looks like no
see
pub
you.
I've ever been to.
Antonio, I think you're in the picture. Is that your
Yes.
yellow and gold?
Yep, that's me in the foreground.
It is. Yeah, it is. There it is.
So I guess that's kind of the next question. We've read the scenarios. We've got 1, 2, and 3. What happened?
Well, I think this.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
I think
Antonio.
what we will get into illustrates a problem that we still have at Pennsic. That you can design a scenario that is completely encompassed in 3 sentences. You can tell people that all you have to do is take this from A to B, something that is easily communicable in a few sentences or, a few lines of text, and it is somehow becomes enormously difficult to get everyone on the same page the day of a battle. And I think that still happens today, even with relatively straightforward battles that we fight all the time. There seem to be always questions about what particular conventions are active, when in fact they may have all been in the book or explained by a marshal standing on a hay bale over and over and over again. But just because something is easy to talk about does not mean it's easy to communicate or
To be
explain to
fair,
an army.
I've gotten conflicting information from marshals standing around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes,
Many times.
and the marshals are not exempt from this problem. It's a game of telephone between the marshals too, and that is also an issue.
In terms of this specific battle, the East Kingdom seems to have not gotten the information beforehand. The Middle Kingdom, however, had excruciatingly detailed information on this battle because that was my job.
How did that happen?
And so what we did actually was, so the Middle Kingdom every month had, like back in this time, I don't know if it's still the thing because I haven't lived in the Middle Kingdom for over a decade now. Wow, has it been so long? Okay.
You're old.
So back in this time, we would have a kingdom war practice every single month between Gulf Wars and Pennsic. And the joke was 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks every August, the National Guard quote, because we did that. And then in addition to the kingdom war practice, we held usually a regional war practice every month, which might be on different weekends. So then the command staff would be beholden to go around to these different regions if they could, and also reinforce the information. So we would actually run these scenarios. I remember running them at Simple Day. I remember running them at Baron Wars. I remember running them at Northern Oaken War Maneuvers. I actually remember running these specifically at Simple Day even, because it was so bloody hot. That's like our last event before Pennsic. And we actually did this big thing where we put a roll of duct tape in this area and like a shoe in this area, like whatever, like a jar of Gatorade in this area, whatever happened to be on the field at the time. And we'd be like, okay, this thing needs to get here, 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 go. And the commanders would have to remember that and then move them. And so we ran this all summer long. And then even the day before the battle at Pennsic, I had that map printed out, like 20 copies of this map. And I ordered the command staff for Mid-Realm Rapier to show up the night before the battle. And I gave everyone a copy of the map, and I had a stopwatch. And I would be like, okay, number 4 is going to be the tailor, and we have to get the bolt of cloth to the tailor. All right, go. All right, you're in the tavern, you're in the barrack, you're in the ship somehow. Like, and then I'd pull everyone back and be like, okay, now everyone has to make a run on the barrack, because we wanted to make sure that our actual command staff would be able to lead their units into these scenarios. And so we prepared them all year for, they need to do a deliverable. There's going to be a deliverable. You have to have this thing at this time at this place in order to win this battle. And so because of that, like, we trained them all year that this is what they were going to expect. So the Middle Kingdom went into this battle knowing that this is exactly what was expected of them.
I remember running wind sprints basically the night before with you with the stopwatches. We were trying to figure out which path was faster to get to that room. And so we'd go this path and we go that path. And then when you're coming back from a room, what are your options to get back? Well, there was like, I was involved. I was down. We are going to go do this thing. I'm running flat out as hard as I can.
Yes, exactly that.
So the A,
Well, that
that's
sounds-
precious. A,
Sounds
that's
good.
absolutely precious. But B, it sounds like the Mid-Realm had a lot of lead-up time with practicing this, and a little bit less of the tin can communication that was brought up by both Arnaz and by Dorinda. And
Yeah,
I'd
talk
like
about
to
that.
hear from Ethelmark as well. Not Ethelmark, sorry, Atlantia on this as well. I'd like to hear from Trimaris, Ethelmark, and Atlantia on how much preparation you guys had. When did you find out about this battle? What happened when you got there? So I'm gonna start with Arnaz.
Sure. So like I said, I think I've always been involved in the command structure for Rapier for Gulf Wars because my Don was Sylvain Lanoux. And that was just his thing, and that's what he enjoyed. And so all of us cadets kind of like just took care of that, and we all were commanders at different times and different points. And so in Trimaris, we do the same thing kind of for Gulf Wars, not that level, mostly because we don't have that many Rapier fighters, but we do train melees like once a month, or at least we did, oh gosh, 14 years ago. It's been for like Brighid, it's been 10 years since I've been in Trimaris, so I can't really speak for them now, but that's what we did. So as an allied kingdom, you know, when I got on site, we established before getting there that I had a queen who needed to be on the field, and that I would be the person in charge of making sure all of the Trimarians at Pennsic who wanted to fight with us and with the queen would fight together. And that's actually an important part, because you see, as Trimaris, we specifically allied with the Middle Kingdom because the Middle Kingdom brings more people to Gulf Wars than the East does. So for a long time, that was the case. And so we wanted to make a really good show for Mid-Realm so that they might make a good show for us when our war counted, which was Gulf Wars. So that was my purpose in there. So my job was to find the Mid-Realm commanders or somebody who knew something, say, hey, this is what I've got. This is what I can do with my group. Maybe some years we are running gunners, some years we have royalty and we want to protect them. This year we happen to have a solid enough unit to form a shield wall. We had about 12 fighters, one of them who ended up being a runner, and then 11 of them, and that included our queen. We had, I believe, 4 or 5 people who were comfortable with shields, who were able to be down in front, and then the rest of them were tall with brace that were behind us. So that was our strength. So we didn't know anything about the scenario before we got to Pennsic. We didn't even know how many people exactly we were going to have by the time we get to Pennsic. It's just once we get to Pennsic, we round up our troops, find out who's going to be there. And not every Trimarian fights for the Trimarian crown at Pennsic. Maybe somebody has a cousin who is prince of another kingdom and they want to go run with them. It's our vacation war. So we have a little bit of leeway in that. So for us, if I remember correctly, I think I interjected myself into as many mid-realm commandy things as I could find so that I would get some info. And then it was my job with me and my cadet brothers and with my Don to basically make sure everyone in our kingdom knew to meet at a certain time. We all got tabard up, we all distributed our shields, and we had a task. So this battle was really, really fun for us as an allied kingdom, but I think that was because we had this organization structure in place that we could rely on. And we as a kingdom all really understood the scenario, because I had made it my business to stick my nose in everything that I could and to tag along and to follow along. And so I could get that information back to the people who needed to. So that's kind of what happened. I've got some great war stories, what happened on the field, but I'll feel like I'll save it later.
I will get to those because I think that's what everyone is here for. All 10, 15 of our participants, in addition to you guys, I didn't count y'all.
You've watched the recording up till now is, you know, they're holding up for something.
Right? And it's probably going to be the no shit there I was part of the evening. But I'm going to jump over to Dom next, and then I'm going to hit Dorinda for how did you find out about this battle? How did you learn what your task was going to be on the field? How much prep time did you have? Playing off of both what Brighid and Arnaz have said.
So very little for me, honestly. At this point, I was in a melee unit that had been building and working within Atlantia for a long time. Mm-hmm. And we were tasked very, very specifically day of the battle. We knew the scenarios and what was going on. We didn't have like sprint runs beforehand or timed battle, delivery times or whatever. We were way more about killing whoever's in front of us. So we walked through the hay bales beforehand and we said, all right, here's where the choke points are. Here's where we need to get to. Here's where the lines will most likely be formed when the battle starts. And then, so I'm up here with my group and said, hey, you're going to run to this intersection and it's going to be key to hold everything. And you're going to hold this intersection and kill all these other people. So cool. Well, then I got assigned, our unit said, all right, well, you're also getting all of these heavy fighters. The majority of them are special forces military who also are really, really interested in running really, really fast and killing as many people as possible. So you're all going to go to the same point and kill everyone in front of you. And that was like as far as we got. That's as much information as we got rolled down. And so I was told, run fast, don't let the crazy people behind you catch you, and kill everyone in front of you as soon as you can. And that was literally the amount of instruction that we got rolled down to us.
Okay, and I can see from the picture you were fighting with the East.
Yeah, correct.
Sorry, Brighid, did you have a question? Or
no, this is Dorinda.
No,
that was a perfect lead-in into what Ethelmart got. Because I think what Ethelmart got was, this is really complicated, we'll explain it in the morning. And in the morning, for the first one, what they tried to tell us was, we're going to go kill everyone and take the beanbags. And as soon as they said, we're going to kill everyone, Atlantia said, yay, and burst into cheers, and nobody heard the, and we're going to collect the beanbags part. So we just killed everyone.
Stop listening. Totally stop listening after the killing part.
Yeah, we're going to kill everyone because that's what Atlantia does. And we're going to kill everyone. Woo! And that was our instruction for the day. And
orders received, right? Kill people.
Yeah. Like, who was fighting for which kingdom?
Wistrick, go ahead.
We were fighting for the East with Atlantia.
Okay.
Yep. And
I haven't been able to figure out who was on the mid side other than the mid, but Atlantia went into.
And Trimaris. We had Trimaris.
Both of you. Both of you were very effective, I'm sure.
I think we had on Stiera.
But what I remember, because I was there for the walkthrough the day before and did some of the, like, we were having comparative running also in Atlantia because, and I think this is what Roz got told. This was all that got communicated to the Atlantic commander was, you guys are going to run over there and form a line and stop everybody coming in from the south while everybody else grabs the bags. And that was the charge that Dominyk and the Dragoons and all those heavy fighters were leading. And so we were doing comparative running of how fast to get to here versus how fast from here, what the path is going to be.
Oh yeah. So I was running that, but no one told me what it meant at all.
Yeah.
Just kill someone.
Yeah, it would basically go that way, keep running, and then kill anybody who gets in the way. And
I ran into Atlantia during this battle, and it was hilarious.
All right, so I'm gonna jump back to Antonio, who I know has said that he didn't have much skin in the game when it came to actually fighting it because he was RMIC and all that fun, super many titles and jobs on top of it. But we've heard from the mid in how much preparation. We've heard from our allies how little or much preparation they got. And are giggling a little bit because we know to tell Atlantia, run fast, turn left, and then kill everyone. Because we've had that same exact thing happen.
Bro, we can do the same thing. We can do it at the same time.
It makes me very happy that nothing changes. But I want to hear from
across the field, all the way.
What?
Still says so.
If this is all a lead up to ask me about how the East prepared, I'm not going to be able to tell you.
Was there any preparation at all? Do you recall any training, any melee, anything?
Certainly the East has a series of war camps where we do melee training. But there, I don't recall specifically working for this scenario.
Okay, that's plenty for me, and part of the reason I gifted someone a stopwatch last year, because they made fun of my binders. All right, so that's kind of the lead up of how complicated the scenario was. You now know what each one of the scenarios were in theory. So, what actually happened? What happened on the field?
Can I toss in one question before we get there?
Please.
Yes.
Brighid, now that we know that the mid spent a year playtesting this, what problems did you encounter when you were practicing?
Ooh, I know one that we drilled into everybody's brain, because those first two scenarios that she had to beat into, especially young, stupid Anton, who just wanted to run fast and kill people, don't get in a fight you didn't need to be in. It was all about delivering the little water bottles, because we had flats of water bottles that got put out in the rooms and you had to go collect them. And it was always, don't get in a fight you don't need to be in. Don't get in a fight you don't need to be in. Just win the fight you have to and run fast. That was it. And it was crazy. Because, I'm young and stupid, and I just got my second TO3 from Triplet. I don't even think it was Zen Warrior at that point.
Wow.
Yeah, boy.
And I was going to Pennsic, and I was going to murder people because I now had a sword for each hand.
So,
yeah, boy, get it.
I was a relatively young warder at the time, and I was trying to encourage everyone. I don't care how good you fight. Your entire job this war is to parry. Like, that's all you have to do is parry and buy us time. And like people were like, what? And I'm like, no, really. I'm not even joking. Dress the line, be defensive. Our entire year is defensive. Don't fight fights you don't have to win. Like, don't fight fights you don't have to fight. Like, don't fight people.
I'm sorry, the mid-realm melee program is no fun at all, but we're effective and efficient.
It's not fun. It really, like, yeah. We drill a lot.
Hey, that went away, and I got to be the meanie person who helped bring it back with Mara and Cole.
One of the other things we learned was how to really communicate with our Rattan counterparts. And we learned that a lot faster than the East Kingdom did. We actually, like, part of the reason we had all the information that we did on this was because the Rattan command staff got it first. And because I was still on Rattan command staff as the Kingdom Scout commander, I was part of that, like, direct pipeline. And so, like, the Rattan guys were like, here's the map. And I'm like, great, mine. Like, and as soon as we found out what the scenarios were going to be, we were like, all right, we're going to train everyone. We're just going to drill on this thing. And, like, I had a laminated copy of the map with me.
You
Yeah,
must have slept with it because you never had that far from your hand. Ever.
it's true. It's true. The mid-realm also, at the time when I was on command staff, all the way up until when I was general, they have 3 hours of command staff meetings every single night. I don't know if this is what they still do.
Well,
Bruce can
we
probably
haven't
confirm.
3 hours, Jesus Christ!
3 hours. So what it is the first one is the king and the allies, and this is combined. Like that's also Rattan is the first one. The king and the allies, and then they have dissemination. While they're having dissemination, we had the Rattan command staff with our allies, and then the third hour was our dissemination. Then after that, we would have to go find every single commander who was not at the meeting. You know who you are. And we had a spreadsheet on where their camps were and where their most likely place to be was. And so if we did not find them at their camps, we had to go find them at their next most likely place to be. And we had to walk all over site to make sure that they knew what their job was. And so it was very heavily organized because that was the only way we could figure out how to make this work.
I can add to that. I have a, oh, sorry.
Sorry. Was that the year that you showed up at the Trimaris camp and you hadn't eaten for a while? And you were like running around ragged, and I was like, you're gonna stop and food?
You did feed me, that was true.
Okay. Yeah.
The other scenario that happened at war got rained out. And it got rained out, and we had to find every single unit, every single ally on site. And so we had a spreadsheet, and Critian, no, it wasn't Critian. Critian was the XO, and he was like, Brighid, I outrank you. I'm going to take the Serengeti and then go party. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, you know where everything is in the swamp anyway. And I'm like, great, I get all the hills. And so I wandered for 4 hours, and I didn't even stop to eat. And finally I showed up on the doorstep of Trimaris, and I was like, all right, here's our information for you for the battle. And she's like, have you eaten? No. Have you drank anything? No.
I didn't have a choice. Yeah, I was like, no, you're sitting, you're eating, and you're drinking, and that's what's happening.
3 hours of meetings at war is way too damn much.
Not just.
Is it still that way?
It's every day before a battle.
Every day before the battle.
Trap has literally nicknamed himself my war widow, because I am in meetings so often. And I can add to that, Brighid, we have spreadsheets with that information. And here's your Facebook name. Here's your cell phone number. Here's your whatever. If you don't show up to the meeting, you will be in trouble with me. I'm no longer chief of staff, so people aren't as scared of me anymore. But
we're still supposed to be talking about. We're still supposed to be talking about what happened during the fight.
Yes, I know, and I'm jumping over there. Thank you, Dom.
So sorry, Antonio asked what we learned. That's what we learned was over communication and really, really, really drilling the deliverables.
Yep. And
so,
Dorinda,
can I call bullshit? Like, we showed up and said we're told kill people. Y'all were running this practice for a whole year.
Well, you were allied with the East.
Right.
Yeah.
It does not benefit me to tell you how to.
Mid philosophy and also I guess the mid realm heavy Rapier relationship at that time versus maybe what was going on in the East seems like that was a huge deciding.
That's true. That's true.
Huge
That's
deciding
true.
factor
Yes.
in the
Kill people and
success
collect
of
bean
our army.
bags. That's the and collect bean bags.
Okay, so scenario one.
what actually happened? That's where
No
I've
one
been
dies when
trying
you
to
collect
go.
a beanbag. I don't give a shit.
Okay, so I'm going to start with Arnaz on this. So you said that you have some great stories from what happened at this battle, and I don't really mind if you can't go into the specifics. We just want to hear the good stories. We've heard that Brighid found you. We heard that Brighid gave you the background. We've heard how much background she had. We've heard how much background the East had. What actually happened when it happened?
All right, let me see if I remember. So we showed up at our little section, actually a couple nights before when Brighid told me what we could do. I said, okay, fine. What we can do is we can hold a shield wall. We understood the idea of if we have less people than they, we really have lesser numbers than they do, then if we can tie up a force that's twice as big as ours, then we're doing our job. If we can tie up a force that's 3 times the size, we're doing our job. More importantly, if we can tie up fighters so that the people who are stealing the gold can steal the gold, we are doing our job. So we have one guy who is somebody who can sneak in and out of like almost anything and just, you know, keep quiet enough that no one notices him. And he's really fast. And we said, okay, he can go with Brigid's staff and go steal the gold. And so that was him. Yeah, that was Barbarossa did that. And the rest of us were like, okay, we've got the queen, and our queen, who is actually the queen of Trimaris right now, Maisie, she has a lot of nicknames on the heavy field that come from her heavy style of fighting, which is running full on, charging into a line with a shield and a sword, and like nobody can guard her because she is off here, there, and all over the place. And she adapted that strategy to Rapier. But because we knew the scenario, we knew going in, our job was to basically form a wall somewhere and to try and tie up numbers greater than our own for as long as we can. And that was going to be our hero moment. And I think that's a really important thing for allies, is that allies don't necessarily remember who wins and loses a battle or the war points, but what we remember is our hero moments. So if you can phrase what that hero moment is, like that is what you take away from the scenario. So what we did is we all got ready and dressed up. And if you look at that picture, we're all wearing matching tabards, which was great because we had to identify the queen as she ran around. She ran over to a certain spot and we saw the other kingdom, somebody marching through the hay bales coming at us, looked around, said, okay, we're going to make our stand here. So we made our stand, we got into formation and we waited with the shields down low, brace up high. And the corridor was just the right diameter across, or right width across, so that we could form a I think it was 5 shields on the bottom and 6 brace on top. And we held that position. And the first people who saw us kind of broke off from there and came to us. And we were at 11, and they must have been probably somewhere between 15 and 20. And as you guys know, when you have a solid shield wall like that, and you know your job is just to, you know, just to defend an area, you can actually hold that for a long time, and you can actually pick off forces that are greater than you because it's a choke point. And we did, and we held it for a very long time. And at some point we noticed another group came over and pulled off of their side and came over to us as well. And I see the map, and I cannot for the life of me remember where we were in the field at all. Because
which uphill or downhill side?
I really don't remember. Although if you go to slide 3, I saw us on there.
Is this you guys over here?
Almost. Go up one more. We're wearing, we're close. Go up one more slide. Yeah. So if you look in the middle here, you see somebody with a mid-round shield. Yeah. So you see the mid-round shield. You see the person behind that in the navy tabard. That one is, I think that's Sylvain. And I think the navy tabards that you see go in that direction are us trying to keep up with our queen. Now, is this, do you know if this is
too tall to be Sylvain?
Yeah, I think it is.
So the Trimaris, is that the Trimaris shield, or is that Atlantia shield in shield 4?
This shield here, that's a mid-realm, isn't it? Oh, no.
No, shield, or slide 4.
Oh.
Slide here? 4, yeah, no, never mind, that's Atlantia.
Yeah, so all of these pictures are from the Atlantean start point, that this gate here.
Okay.
So anything running away from the camera is Atlantean at that point.
Cool. So we must have been back here.
The mid-realm coming in from the side.
Yeah, so we must have been back here. But honestly, for us, we didn't run the battle ahead of time. We didn't know where all the buildings were. Like, that wasn't our goal. Our goal was to just, you know, form our little wall. That was our little thing we could do. We only had 11 people, and to just hold a position and to just kind of pull people off. And it ended up being that our group of 11 actually held off a force between 30 and 40 people before we all died in a blaze of glory. And the best part about that is when we all died in the blaze of glory and we all, you know, stepped over the hay bales, we noticed the people who are against us were like, yeah, we killed them, aha. And then went behind us to see what strategic point they saw. And it was an empty hallway. Never any gold there. It was never a building. There was never anyone running there at all. All we were doing was preventing them from actually doing anything meaningful on the rest of the field. And it worked because all 11 of us knew that was our job. And we all knew that we died horribly and hideously, but we did our job for the good of the scenario. So that was scenario 1. That's what happened for us. And that's why it was really fun for us. We didn't get a whole lot of kills, but we achieved our goal. That was our hero moment, and it was cool.
Which, after hearing from both Brighid and Anton, we know that the mid-realm was pretty heavily outnumbered that year. So it sounds like an important job, even if it was a hallway in the end.
Yeah,
That was the command to
that
everyone.
But the
And
job
Your
is,
position,
yeah.
don't be a hero,
Yeah.
don't die.
Yeah, and you know, that goes along with in Trimaris when we're on the Rapier field so many times, although when I was general, there was a couple times we had numbers on Anciora, and like I said, you know, this is like over 10 years ago I'm speaking of, but we were used to fighting forces that had numbers on us, and sometimes had more skill on us too. Anciora had a lot more white scarfs than Trimaris had that went to war. So we understood that, you know, don't fight if you don't have to, and parry is good. And, you know, not a lot of people enjoyed having shields. We had 24-inch round plastic shields, and yet half of our unit had those shields to specifically fulfill that goal. Now, scenarios 2 and 3, we did something different, but that was how scenario 1 played out.
Okay, so I'm gonna actually jump to Dorinda next to ask what happened in your scenario 1 with this battle. And if you don't remember specific scenarios, that's fine. Just give us a war story. What was your goal? What happened when you fulfilled it?
Scenario 1, I somewhat remember, mostly with anger, deep-seated trauma and anger, but I do remember it. All I remember for number 1, and I'm pretty sure we went into the right-hand gate compared to where Atlantia went in. And I swear, all I remember was the strategy was, we're gonna kill them all. We can do this. And, you know, I pick on Atlantia, but they're really good at that. And I remember we went in, and in shorter time than people thought we would be able to do it, we swept the field, and we were all excited. And then they came back and they said, and you lose. We were like, what do you mean we lost? We killed everybody. And they're like, well, you killed everybody, but you didn't take the gold. And we're like, but they're all dead. We have all day to take the gold. And they're like, no, you needed to keep one of them alive and take the gold. And that was not a rule that had been communicated to us. And to be frank, I know Brighid is laughing and it's hysterical. It really was troubling for us. It was like, seriously, you can be that dominant in a battle, and we lost.
okay, so could dead people carry gold?
No.
Oh.
No, but we hadn't
No.
taken the
Oh, but they
out of
did though.
town yet. So we had position, we had the gold, we could get the gold, but because they were dead, the clock stops, and we hadn't gotten the gold yet. They said, well, you didn't get the gold, so even though you could get the gold, you still lose. So your
I'm sorry.
so I'm just saying, so we
Oh,
didn't
that's
understand that. And I mean, Atlantia was impressive, and they went through and they took out people. And I don't know how much of the field we owned when it was over, but we had taken very little. I'm not sure if we'd taken any gold off, because our focus was take the field, and we took the field, and they're like, and you lose. And we were not happy. So that is my memory.
I remember, if I can jump in here, Moira, our general, was standing at our gate counting how many bags of gold came in. And as soon as we had whatever it was, 26, I don't remember what it was, but it was half plus 1, she wouldn't let any of us back out in the field. I was up there chomping at the bit, waiting to go back in the gate, and she wouldn't let us go back in. You don't need to go in, but I can go kill people. No, wait, you have another round for that. Save your energy. Because we were counting.
27 plus 1. No, 28 plus 1.
Yeah, but we were counting as they were coming in, and as soon as there was half plus 1, that was it. We weren't allowed back in the field. So you absolutely took that entire field. I remember people getting pushed out our res gate. Whole town was yours.
Yep.
And that's where I talked about, you know, as those things get communicated down, certainly by the time it got to ordinary soldier on an ally, did not understand those win conditions. Didn't understand it. So.
Yeah, like I said, and at least down at my level, and I think Dom will also, if we kill them all, we win.
Well, yeah, when it's not a res battle, that should be the victory condition, right? This the eternal.
That's Atlantean thinking. I mean,
So I was killing people nonstop the entire time. I won an award for killing more people in that battle, and it was over 30, I think, that I killed. So it was ridiculous that we hadn't won the war point at that point. It was very frustrating.
I think that's where that, like I said, the Rashomon effect of both sides thought they won, and because win conditions weren't like smoothly communicated. Let's see. Okay, Brighid, you can go for it.
My cat's meowing mournfully while I wait. Two comments before I go into what happened from the mid-realm side. And thank you, Anton, for that memory of Moira. One, I was unaware of anyone who was dead who had ever carried a beanbag. And I would dispute that because I don't believe that cheating happened. Perhaps one or two people may have done it because they were misguided, but I can tell you from my standpoint and my team, that's not what happened. The second thing is that, and I know it's frustrating that people are like, I just want to kill everyone and win. When the sides are so divided, basically if Ethelmark and Atlantia go to one side, the war is no fun. Like, we've had it on both sides where we have too many people on one side or too many people on the other. Atlantia and Ethelmark always have to be split. Like, there's too many people otherwise, and it's not any fun. And so for me, like, I understand the frustration that we could kill everyone, yay, because we outnumbered them 7-1, cool. But I actually really appreciated that there was some way to win this with cunning and ingenuity. Like, we could go to our vacation and know that it's not all lost because we worked really hard and because we were able to pull it off. So from the
No, I absolutely
been where it's been, you know, that lopsided for whatever reason. I remember one that was everybody against the East, basically.
Yeah, and
I don't know that we've seen something designed towards the win condition where numbers weren't decisive.
No, I would absolutely say that. Like, knowing beforehand that you can only win if you have more people is complete bullshit and makes your entire vacation no fun. That absolutely is a truth, and that absolutely is something that permeates the entire SCA and especially at wars, right? Like, if the war is determined beforehand, it's no fun. It really isn't. It really isn't.
It really isn't, and there's a lot of pressure. Like it's not vacation to go to Pennsic if you're from the Mid-Realm. It's a job. Like, the entire war staff is a job. The entire fighting is a job. You spend the entire day, every day, before the fighting happens, you have put in hours and hours just to get this thing off the road. So knowing that you're going to a war where you're just going to be outnumbered regardless is no fun. Force balancing is also, like, just not an ideal solution either, and we just have to figure out a better solution to figuring out how allies are split before, like, any of this gets down to the nitty-gritty.
It's actually really tough also because allies, there's so much more that happen with allies. Like, for us being in Trimaris, we always want to decide with the middle no matter what, because we need the middle for Gulf Wars. They bring more people, and we usually, like I said, at least back then, Trimaris fielded a lot less people than Ancior. Sometimes Ancior would field 3 or 4 times the number that Trimaris would. We would have more people from North Shield on the Trimaris side than Trimaris. We'd have more people from Mid-Realm on the Trimaris Rapier side than they were for Trimaris. So, but yeah, I mean, like I remember probably my worst war battle I've ever been in is one where we had to side with the Middle Kingdom for that. And we were held so far in reserve that we laid down on the field and took a nap because we were the fourth tier in reserve there. And that was not fun. And we were debating just changing sides just to have fun with that. But sometimes there can be so much more going on with that, and it makes it a little difficult to do.
It's true.
Then I moved to the West Kingdom, and then it was much easier to balance numbers as needed.
Well, there's the West Kingdom Alliance. But anyway, going into scenario one. Scenario one, from the Middle Kingdom standpoint, we have our 5 regions and our allies aligned, and also we had for the first time ever, we had a chivalry unit. So we actually had a unit of like 20 knights on the field as a unit, and that was as big as some of our regions and bigger than some of our allies to have that also. And so we had kind of these 6 large units, and we had our allies. And so what we basically did was we took a line from that leftmost corner all the way up to the ship, and we went in to start to form that line. And so my entire unit, I had a unit of about, I want to say 10 to 15 people. And the entire job was I would show up behind that line with half the unit, and I would say, okay, I've got my people here, and I'd distribute like 3 people with them. And I'd say, I need you to push your unit forward so we can grab the beanbags. And then my people are gonna run away, and then all you need to do is parry. Like, I just don't wanna get flanked. And then I'd go to the next unit commander in line, and all the unit commanders were ready and prepared to know that this was what I was going to tell them. So I would walk up and say, I'm ready, I'm here, I've got my people. And they'd say, great. And they'd make a push, and that was like the only push they had to do. And I had these very motivated newbies who had like a dagger. Like, I'm not even joking. They took a dagger out and a free hand to grabby the beanbags. And so they ran out with a dagger so that they were armed and would grab a beanbag and run it back. And we had someone counting the beanbags at the entrance so that we knew exactly how many we had. And so we did this the entire length of the line, and I would deposit like my 2 to 3 people behind each unit and say, okay, my people are here, go. My people are here, go. And a lot of times I'd wait, because like if an area had gotten like heavily destroyed during their push, I'd need for them to res back before then we could go do whatever it was. I don't even remember if this is a res battle, it may have not been. But I needed to distribute people around the line so that our line could push forward, grab beanbags, and run like hell. And so that was my entire job in this scenario, was I was the commander that went through and pushed, told units when they needed to push forward, and said, after we grab the beanbags, fall back, and all you have to do is parry, like just stay alive. And so we won. And so I was so thrilled because we did not expect to win anything that year. We were so demoralized going into Pennsic, knowing how overwhelmed we were going to be, that being able to actually win something because we planned for it and we had a unit like based around it and we had good intel dealing with it, and we had people specifically assigned to the deliverables. I was so happy with scenario 1. Scenario 2
so good for you.
was awful.
Antonio. So, Antonio, how did it look? How did it go from the Rapier Marshal's perspective?
The first scenario, just
I can't separate them in my head.
Okay.
And I think a lot of that is because they're, whatever happened in 1 and 2 was overwhelmed by the mess that was 3. And that is all that has stuck in my mind.
All right.
So
Sorry.
It sounds like a lot of our panelists don't really have memories of number 2.
Well, number 2 was impossible for the mid-realm to win because we would have to distribute the beanbag to a room, but they could move it. And so we literally had no ability to win number 2.
So that was one of those numbers won it, right?
Yeah, it was one that we just couldn't possibly win. We didn't have the numbers to like for instance, take a beanbag to number 7 and then make sure it stayed there. Like we just couldn't do that.
And I recall,
And so we just we were like, all right, this is gonna suck and we're gonna lose this one. Let's fight like hell for scenario 3.
Yeah, and like for us, scenario number 2 was basically our queen decided she wanted to go and like kill people, and we just spent the entire time trying to figure out where the hell our queen was on the field and try to like make some of us stand next to her so it looked like we were doing our job. Like that was the best we could do for scenario 2. The scenario 2 was res, I believe, too, so we kept resing back.
But it was a pointless battle for us because we just couldn't win it. So we were like, just go out and fight. And like walk back slow from res. Like don't wear yourself out.
Anton can win it by himself.
Because I didn't
wanted to. He was there.
All the effort.
Yeah,
was
2 swords
on sequence 1. Like sequence 2, for some reason in my head, I thought if we got it to the room, once it was in the room, it was safe, which I know is for 3, but I thought that was for 2 because I remember being so mad because Rigo from North Shield, I'm going to throw him under the bus, but it was brilliant because now in hindsight, it was the most brilliant tactical move possible. Rigo must have killed whatever mid-realm unit was in front of him, grabbed 2 bags of gold, walked them out and dropped them on the East Res line and said, now they can't win. And I was mad. But I was now looking back on it, and you look at the rules and you're like, dude, that was brilliant. There is nothing to stop that. That was spectacular.
And we're back to breaking scenarios.
That bastard. Yep.
That becomes the thing.
Do any of our other panelists have any memories from scenario 2 before we ask about the clusterfuck that was number 3?
I remember I rezzed twice the whole time.
Oh, oof. Dorinda?
No memory. I just remember tell us what we're supposed to do this time and we will do it.
Yeah.
I just remember determination. We're going to do, this time we're going to do the right thing and whatever that is. That's all I remember.
I apologize for butchering the name, but in chat, Master
Flurry.
Flurry.
Master Flurry. Just he hit the nail on the head, which was the middle loss number 2 before Pennsic even started.
Correct.
Which is never a good thing, as so many of our panelists have pointed out. But we've heard a couple of panelists now hint at how horrific number 3 was, including the RMIC, which means that it was extra juicy. And we can be assured of that.
There are bad scenarios, and then there are the RMIC when you mention them.
The RMIC thinks you done fucked up. I'm going to start with the 2 allies of the East, and then I'm going to jump to the mid to find out what happened. So with scenario 3, Dom, what do you remember?
I remember it was a meat grinder. Like there were so many angles and so many different ways we were fighting that whole time. Like it was just, I had no idea what was actually going on at that point.
Understandable. Probably back to the tin can.
Pictures are from that time because, like, here's Atlanteans fighting the wrong direction at that point. There was no front ways or back ways in that one.
It kind of sounds like the tin can problem that we've brought up a couple of times in discussing how we disseminated information to our allies and our troops.
No. This was way more about there being no direction, like being no up or down, north or south, right? Like it was just do all the things in all different directions. And several times I found myself like behind the other team saying, well, okay, well, I guess I'll kill them, but where are they fighting? Why are they fighting over there? So it was a massive clusterfuck.
And again, speaking as an Atlantean noob, I was fighting mid-realmers up here at the far north end of the town. It really was just chaos.
It was absolute chaos. That's what I remember most about it.
I loved it.
It was fantastic. I killed so many people, had so much fun, had no idea what the fuck was going on, but it was wonderful.
All right, I'm gonna jump over to Dorinda. What do you remember from scenario number 3?
What I remember is probably why Antonio remembers this so poorly and with such sadness. So I think, this is only our 3rd year of melee rapier. And so, people were trying to do the right things, and there had been some thoughts ahead. And so there were people who had shield walls, trying to hold up, whether it was doorways or parts of the thing. And I think you had to take things and you had to put them in the building. And so
Yes.
I think the thing was, if it got into the building, you got the point, or that was the objective. So people were diving with the things, which is not safe. And so I think by the time we got to the 3rd one, fencing rules went out the window. People didn't know how to break through shield walls, so we made up stuff. I don't think Antonio liked what we made up. So I think by that point, people were tired, cranky, angry, confused, turned around, and they were probably doing things that they shouldn't have been doing. And that's what I remember, and what the folks in Ethelmark mostly remembered from the 3rd one, is they were like, if we're going to have a complicated scenario, it shouldn't encourage people to break the rules in a way that's going to make the marshal cry.
And that's why scenario planning and training are so important.
It's also a great point about how the mindset caused by earlier iterations of the battle just leads to not worse behavior, but worse life choices.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna jump over to Arnaz, who's the last of the allies.
Yeah, for scenario 2 and 3, our thing was pretty much the same, and I really don't remember much of it at all, because really my job was, okay, go back and res. Now that I've resed, where is my queen? Okay, look for her wearing the queen's tabard. Look for other people wearing the navy blue tabards. Okay, I think she's there. Okay, I'm gonna go there. And by the time I get there, she may or not be there. She might have rezzed or something like that. Okay, maybe I'll fight here. I don't even know if I'm fighting with people with the same color tape on that I have. I'm relatively new to Death from Behind because we don't have that, or we didn't at the time at Gulf Wars. And just, okay, now I'm dead. Let's go back and res. Where's my queen?
Glorious chaos.
Yes,
Oh.
glorious chaos. So I think that's kind of the difference for me, is that I really don't know where I was on the field. I have no concept of this map because it didn't matter. It didn't matter where I was going. It didn't matter what the scenario was for me. It didn't matter, what we were fighting over. None of the other things mattered. All that mattered is I needed to spend as much time next to my queen as possible. And my job was to make sure my queen had a good war. So I needed to be next to her in case somebody made a poor life choice, that they didn't hit her too hard and I would take the hit instead. Or that, I could calm somebody down. Or sometimes people go, ooh, pointy hat, and they throw shots they shouldn't be throwing, and I had a shield, I can parry that. So my goal is for the fun of my queen and the safety of my queen. And I think that's really what all of us were. And because our queen had far more running stamina and far more awareness of crazy battles like this, because of her time on the heavy field, she just kept going. The rest of us were dropping like flies. So to have even one or two of us like be there next to the queen was all that. I will say that we did have one really fun hero moment where I think it was scenario 2 or 3, and we're fighting over a thing, and there's like a hold, and we stop, and it was actually the queen and a bunch of us next to him, and somebody looks over and goes like, wow, you guys sure have a lot of pointy hats over there. And she looks at him and goes, I prefer your majesty. And we're like, that's our queen. She's cool. So yeah, that's pretty much that's what happened for us.
It sounds fun. It sounds much better than poor Ethelmark and our RMIC when we get to him.
Yeah, I guess we had a purpose, we had a task, and yeah, so that was cool.
It sounds awesome. All right, Brighid and Anton, what happened with scenario 3 and the mid?
All right, Anton, you want to go first or should I?
Well, you probably have a bigger picture because,
I
again,
do.
I'm the idiot. I'm running around with swords. And I remember that we had to take the pig to the butcher. We had a little pink stuffed animal pig and it needed to go to the butcher. And we took the pig. We successfully got the pig to the butcher. And then I died a whole bunch. And I remember being sent to help the Shiv getting the keg to the pub. Because
the fucking keg.
months.
I have a story about that one.
How exciting it was going to be that she's going to give the Shiv unit the keg to take to the pub. And I ended up really, my entire job was to try not to let the Shiv unit get DFB'd because they were really cranky about that. And my overall success rate on that, probably not so good, but you know, I had a mission and I was gonna try really, 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 really hard.
Try hard.
That's all that sticks in my head.
Okay, so from the middle side, my job in this scenario is I had a clipboard, and that's not surprising. And there were 8 deliverables for the east and 8 deliverables for the mid. So I had 16 items that I had to keep track of. And once they hit their spot, I needed to check them off on my list. Okay. So I had this clipboard and I had all the items for the blue, all the items for the red, and what room they needed to be in. The chaos happened in this scenario for several reasons. And well, I'll get to that in a sec. So the 6 items were, there was a bolt of cloth that had to go to the tailor. There was the keg that had to go to the tavern. There was a chest that had to go to the ship. There was a flag that had to go to the barracks. There was a pig that had to go to the butcher. There was a chest of gold that had to go to the bank. I've since remembered that one. And then there were 2 more, and I don't remember them. There were 8 total.
One was like,
And once one of
Some of the, is that what these green dots are?
that probably is true. Scroll up.
Some of them
No.
at least, because
I don't.
that's only, there are only like 3 of them, but
Yeah, no, there were a lot of them. The map could also, by the way, after we ran this scenario, the Rattan scenario ran the same map. So what that probably is the relics for the Rattan scenario, and we had them run it last because they were going to destroy all the tape between the hay bales. And they did. It was glorious. There was tape everywhere.
All of these hay bales.
It was a broken field battle.
Hay and tape on the ground.
There was no hay bales after that. There was no hay bales. There was just hay on the
Yeah.
field.
I remember seeing people like falling through the walls on the heavy field. Yeah.
No, there was no walls. There was no hay bales.
Yeah,
it was just hay and
there were
field.
no town walls. So one of the stories coming back, like they came back to camp in Atlantia, was that the ballista were set up here, and they were just, since there weren't actual walls, they were shooting flat trajectory from 50.
Yeah, it was crazy. So the three relic placements are probably for Rattan.
Yeah.
But we had eight placements, and once you got your thing into your place, then it was not able to be moved, which was way better than the second scenario, where you could just take our red bean bags, toss them, and then we could not win, right? So that was the placement scenario. So I was running around with a clipboard and the sword I call Pixie, which is a 28-inch sword that I run around with so I don't feel inspired to run into the line. Okay. The two factors I think that led to a lot of the drama that led up to this was, one, the vast outnumbering of the battle and how long we'd been on the field for that. And 2, there was a lot of frustration after the first scenario was not kill them all. The second scenario was in fact kill them all. And people were really bullshit about that. And by the time we got around to the third scenario, they're like, I have to take the what to the what. And so it was just like changing the scenario every single battle and in rapid succession. And under the heat of a Pennsic resurrection, like when it was this complicated, was probably something I would recommend not doing in the future.
No, this
So-
was the first time. That's the whole point, right? Like, that's the whole point. The reason this battle was so crazy is because it was the first time we changed everything in the middle of the battle for each scenario, right? That's
Exactly.
why everything was going crazy.
We wanted pie in the sky. We wanted to try it, and we did. And I'm not upset that we tried it, and I'm not upset that we did. But like, I'm gonna tell one of the stories that I'm sure Antonio is probably gonna be the one to finish the explanation of, and then I'm gonna tell a hero story. But like, so the problem was is that once you got one of the items through the threshold, you could not move it. So as long as we could get an item through the threshold, it was important. So we had one of the kings of one of the kingdoms, and I feel like it was the king of Anstiora, but I don't remember, so don't, like, I don't
There aren't any
remember that.
Anstiorans on here, so let's say Anstiora.
Yeah,
There's
but
an A kingdom.
basically, they had gotten their fighters to push ahead, and they threw themselves bodily into the room of the tailor with the bolt of cloth. And there was another royal there, and so then you had royal on royal, like, bitching that erupted into a general hold. And so I think this is actually like the boiling over that everyone remembers, is that it like the rules had gotten so complicated and no one understood them, to the point that it was like almost desperation, right? And it was people like trying to do this one thing, because if I just get it into this room, then it can't be taken away from me, right? And so, like, obviously in scenario 2, where everything gets taken away from you isn't the solution either. Like, it doesn't make for a great scenario when you're outnumbered. But this was a situation where it was very frustrating. So what my unit was in charge of during this, again, I had a unit that was in charge of the deliverables. So I was in charge of knowing exactly where each of the items was at any given time. So I had runners along that vertical line, again, from that lower left corner to the upper right. And I had runners running throughout the scenario, telling me where each of the items was. And if anything was attainable, like if we could get something and then take it to somewhere, I would find a unit commander, and I would relocate them and move them to that scenario and get them to move the item. If we found an item that was of the East Kingdoms in a room that the East Kingdom was trying to get to, we would then place a unit there and then try and hold that ground from the East Kingdom getting their item. And in many cases, it was clear that the East Kingdom didn't actually know what items needed to go where or where their items were, because they would just overlook rooms that we were holding because there was an item in there. And we couldn't move it, but we could sure as hell stand around it. And so so that was another aspect of that. So at one point in time, I was standing on the flag that needed to go to the barracks, the blue flag. And Atlantia was pushing through so hard, and I could not get a clear line to get through the Atlantean chaos. There was so much Atlantia. And I was at my wit's end. I didn't have any units. Like, people were walking back from res slow because they were tired. People weren't in cohesive units at that point. And I was just desperate. And I turned around, and as I looked back, there was the king of the middle and the general, Sir Strom, in a 2-wide column, like 10 to 15 guys deep, of chivalry. And they were standing there waiting for me. And they said, Brighid, where do you want us? And I said, I need you to clear out that room right there. And I stepped to the side, and they went in, and then they just threw shots. And they just kept throwing shots as they went in like a lawnmower. And they cleared our path so that we could actually, like, make sure that item hadn't been taken. Because I didn't have anyone to even put on that banner to keep the East from taking it. We fought like hell during that scenario, and for being as outnumbered as I was really proud of the Middle Kingdom. I was really proud of what we did. I wasn't really proud of, obviously, like, the people who had frustrated moments and did things to break the rules, like the person who grabbed the bolt of cloth and threw themselves bodily into the tailor. Like, that's obviously not something I would endorse. But we did our very best from a logistics standpoint to keep the third scenario under control as long as we possibly could. And obviously there was a breaking point, like we just didn't have enough people. So eventually we lost. But I was really proud for what we were able to accomplish during that time.
All right. That sounds like an incredible battle. And I love hearing, while seeing Dom's face, we fought through the Atlantean chaos, and there was so much Atlantia.
There's so much Atlantia. I didn't see Dom's face because he's reduced to this big on my screen.
It was not actually very much Atlantia.
Yeah, well, it felt like that much Atlantia because they were in my way.
All right, so we've heard from all the kingdoms, and I have to say a disclaimer here, which people who had popped in a little bit earlier would have heard, but the reason we have the RMIC from the East Kingdom instead of East Kingdom Command is because I went from person to person to person to person until I could find someone willing to talk about this battle on the East Kingdom side. So just so you know, through no fault of fighting the world, did we not have East Kingdom here.
I asked Roz, who was the Atlantean commander, and she was like, yeah, I'm not the one for this. So
I asked the East General, I asked the East Co-General, I asked someone who became the East General the year after that, and I asked at least one other person who was the general that year and would they be willing to talk. And finally they gave me Antonio's name, and Antonio went, do I have to? And I went, yes you do. So Antonio, here is your big shining moment.
like I said, that is why these two completely vastly different experiences are not just based on which side you were fighting for, but also how close you were to command structure. Like, I think this battle as just a learning opportunity gives us a lot of lessons to learn. But
I would say the same thing, right? Like we learned so much from this battle and the process of creating these scenarios, right? Like so much of what we do now is over-engineered as far as war points go, right? Because of the negotiations, because of the complexity, right? But it's kind of stems back to what we learned from this battle and from the downsides and what we took away from this, right? Like it could be complicated or it could not be complicated. I mean, the goal obviously is to get everything decided by the fighting on the field versus the numbers beforehand, the scenario itself, and everything like that. And I think there's so many lessons we took away from this clusterfuck.
So before I actually jump to Antonio then, I actually had a question that both Wistrick and I agreed we should ask after hearing so many of your stories from the field, whether you were close to command staff or not. Do we think that this battle led to some of the rules lawyering we saw later on?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, that answers that. This evening, since this has been one giant no shit there I was story.
Wait. We haven't actually heard Antonio's
I know. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I promise. I'm setting it up. I promise. I have a direct path. The ADHD has not taken over yet.
Wistrick, you'll note I'm not champing at the bit to start talking.
I was gonna say, he doesn't necessarily want
I'm
to.
just hoping she forgets that I'm here.
No. We are giving him enough warning.
What it's like to be the army for one of the most controversial battles ever.
I think Dorinda and Brighid were correct that the nature of the battle led to some poor fencing. And then you add the heat and it being Pennsic, and everything gets more difficult. Give me 50 fencers at a war camp in April, when if something goes sideways, we all can just go, do over. This would have worked fine. And that's what I really wasn't prepared for, the pressure of competitiveness that Pennsic adds to everything. And particularly this, Second, what this battle didn't have and needed to work were referees, which marshals are not. And in fact, if you look at a scenario and said, we'll need referees for this, that's probably a good signal that you shouldn't be doing that scenario.
No, I love that distinction. That's not something that really percolates into the Rapier mindset.
We
Absolutely.
also very rarely get enough marshals to run the war points themselves at Pennsic. That it's an undue burden on the marshals. It really is. And we still always need like way more marshals than we have.
Yeah, we managed to blur that line a little in the Woods battle when you can have a marshal standing there by a flag with a stopwatch or however they're doing that year and actually keep track of it. And, asking a marshal to stand on a hay bale surrounded by people pushing and make a call as to whether an item crossed the line isn't what the marshal does.
That is absolutely a good point. There should definitely be an effort made to say, hey, watch for the points, do the referee thing as opposed to the safety watching thing. That's an awesome point.
That might just be a thing for a whole nother conversation. I know I just recently got to marshal one of my first Pennsics, and I went, oh my God, it makes so much more sense to me why I lost some of the battles I lost as a general. The marshals.
So, Bruce, are we adding war marshaling to the
We already have it in the folder. Marshaling large-scale melee. Now we have a title. Marshals are not referees. Training for marshaling large-scale
Fantastic.
melee.
Let me know how I can help with that. That's awesome. That's a great point.
A term you'll often hear bandied about is active marshaling, which is, I think code for refereeing in the SCA.
No, that's code for like this hit you, but that didn't hit you.
But at the same time, a lot of
also part of that
in melees happens because there's so much going on. People don't notice that.
Oh, absolutely. No, for sure.
So the battle wraps up, and there are, it wasn't just the mess at the tailor. There were a number of disputes about whether an item was delivered.
Can I just say, after 14 years, I still remember it was the bolt of cloth in the tailor that wasn't one of the major incidents. Like that's.
Oh, that was the major incident because that.
I remember the details.
When kings get involved, everything gets magnified.
I wasn't even on that part of the field.
And I remember, getting reports of all of these incidents, and Moira and I met in the middle of the field and looked at each other and kind of shrugged because it was going to be impossible to litigate all of these. And we relatively quickly agreed between each other that we would call the battle a draw. So I don't think you lost, Brighid. I think, we called it a draw. And I was disappointed that it had all gone sideways, but I was in no way prepared for the rage that I would receive because it had all gone wrong. And that is, again, a function of competitiveness and Pennsic and hot and tired and cranky.
Absolutely.
But it was, now it's, I should have foreseen it. If we had done this, there should have been dispute resolution mechanisms in place. I should have seen this coming, I think.
Sure, but I would like to point out that that's way better than apathy, if you think about it, right? Like that is way better than some of the war points we get where nobody cares because the numbers are so lopsided or whatever. I would prefer hey man, we fought really hard. We need to have resolution for this over whatever, you guys outnumbered us 50-1, whatever. Doesn't even matter at this point. I would say, yeah, the fact that we know we need to have resolution apparatus in place now is fantastic, but it's also awesome that we care so much. Like, that makes it worthwhile.
I'd have to say that one of the times I went to Estrella and I was so upset about a scenario, and I was like, I can't wait to talk about this in Marshal's Court. And they were like, we don't do Marshal's Courts. And I was like, what? Even Pennsic has Marshal's Courts. And I just walked off the field. Like, I literally didn't even take off my mask, walked off the field and walked straight back to camp. Like, at least we have that, you know?
And had it been a marshal issue, maybe a marshal's court would have helped. But we're getting back to referees now. The disputes weren't about violations of the Rapier rules. They were arguments about the facts, about whether the bolt of cloth crossed the line or not. And you have two kings screaming at each other and then screaming at me about what, their version of what happened. And, I'm on that field, I'm not a judge. I can't make a finding of fact.
Absolutely.
And that leaves, sorry, Bruce, giving Bruce flashbacks. And that, that left us, at least at that point, I didn't see a way out from there. But also, I didn't have the belt. I didn't have the collar.
Right.
I was just a guy with a painted stick. And that's a difficult position to be in, when you've got enraged kings on your doorstep.
I think this is a good time to kind of point out, we've heard from several panelists about command staff being a job, about Pennsic in some ways being a job, about Estrella or Gulf Wars being a bit of a job, and Melee making sure people have fun as part of your job. I'd like to just briefly take this moment to say all of us are human. Your marshals in charge, the people negotiating, and we jokingly call these learning experiences on our end because it teaches us how to do a better experience for everyone in the future. But it leads perfectly into what we were going to go to next, which is kind of how could we have actually run this, or could we? And after hearing some of the background,
how would we do it today?
Right. And would this have been a problem today?
First of all, we wouldn't. Right? Like, this is
question, which is, has anyone done a scenario like this in the past 14 years? Like,
we have nothing to this complexity
grandiose
and this level of changing between every single scenario.
Yeah, and there's a reason why we haven't done anything like this in 14 years, and that's because we wouldn't. We could run pieces of it, right? You could run simplified versions of it.
Which we absolutely should do.
I firmly believe that the reason we ran the scenario like we did is because it was a function of the fact that they thought we would have a chance if we could have a complicated win that did not involve us being outnumbered or just simply fighting. Everything at Pennsic comes down to a negotiation. Everything comes down to how a king thinks they can win. And it is so important to win Pennsic. That's a part of our culture I wish we would kill. Like, it's that level of, oh my God, we must win no matter what. East versus mid has been so ingrained even before I started in the mid-90s. And it's frustrating and it's difficult. And it's actually why I enjoyed Gulf Wars a lot more, because it wasn't my war. And like, it's like, yeah. I'm pretty sure the reason we were this complicated was because they knew that we could handle the information in the scenario. And I feel like part of the reason why it wasn't presented to the East the same way is because they were like, we could probably just win by killing them all because we have a lot of people and we're not worried about it. And so the information dissemination comes down from that toxic culture. Like, if they think it's not going to be a big deal, if they don't think that everyone needs to train for it because we just have Ethelmark, Atlantia, and everyone else, like, whatever, like, it just may not be a thing, So, yep. I didn't realize how toxic the kingdoms of the East and the Middle were about Pennsic until I left. And now that I go to war as part of the West Kingdom Alliance, because I'm in on tier now, I my blood pressure has dropped going to Pennsic. It's not a job anymore. I actually enjoy Pennsic for once. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard looking back. And I would never give up the time. I was, I served as general or any of the previous years. I mean, I served on every single Rapier war point for the Midrealm from when it began to when I left the Middle Kingdom. And that was important to me. And it was part of who I grew up to be in the SCA, but I'm really glad I don't do that anymore. And I'm really glad it's not even an option for me to get like coaxed back into it.
And Brighid, I can't speak for everybody, but as somebody who grew up in your shadow, who followed that exact same mindset, because I learned it from the same people you learned it from, and from you, frankly, it's way better now. It really is. I'm seeing the command staff. The Purple Wars are the greatest thing ever. Like, those are spectacular. I don't know how they affect other people that are ally kingdoms, but oh my God. The best thing that has come out of this is I have met more and more East Kingdom fighters, and you get to work with them and you realize that they're really people. Because I remember when I started here, like for this battle, we just trained this mindset that we have to go there like blue skin baby eating bastards. I don't know, but I had to go train this thing. And now I go out and my whole job at Pennsic is just don't let the bad happen to anybody. When you see a bad thing that's about to happen, my guy, your guy, I don't care. We can do this as a little pocket hold. We can just fix this. Don't let the bad happen. And bad still happens, but it happens so much less. And I'd like to think, and I see more and more people happy. I see more and more people now when we do have a hold, talking to people across the line. And it used to be, oh, you can't talk tactics. Why are you talking to those people across the line? And now it's like, hey guys, how's it going? How you been? Good to see you again. And I really think that while there's more that we can do, the distance we have come from this battle to the battles we have today, at least in our kingdom, is immense. And I hope that other people are seeing this across the known world. And I'm just going to shut up now.
Anton, good job, dude. No, I feel you, man.
Here, here.
We've heard this.
Cheers.
Cheers to everyone. We've heard this a couple of times across our various panels, that sometimes the emphasis on playing and on having fun, as well as being efficient and getting better at melee, have caused better melees to happen. Even if the fighters are more ferocious, even if we have more fire and forgets, like badasses like Dom on the field with his stick taking out 15 people, or even if we have the Calivers or the thieves breaking a kill cup in La Rochelle or whatever, seeing people do this more safely has really led to a better melee culture all around. So that leads to my final question, and I'm going to open it to the entire panel, which is, what have we learned from this battle and going forward? And you guys already touched on it. That's how I know you're a good panel, is you've already answered some of these questions. But what did we learn from this battle, and what can we continue to learn as a culture to make melee better?
Who's going first?
Well, I was going to open it to all of y'all, but if you want to go first, Dom, you're the big picture on my screen.
All right. So this battle taught, at least in our kingdom, we focus on very much on. We actually related back to the book Ender's Game, right? The gate is down, right? The goal is the goal of the scenario, not what you want to do, not what, what's fun for you at this point. You train the scenario, you get the gold, you win, you focus on the victory condition as opposed to what you want to do, which may be killing people or running around or doing whatever. That is something that we brought back way, very strongly to our culture in the 14 years since that point. The other thing we brought back was that the passion surrounding, hey, we want to do well. We want to, as allies, Atlanta probably will never be a primary kingdom in anything, right? But as allies, we want to do everything we possibly can to help our side win. And we encourage that, right? As much passion as we can, safely, of course, but as much passion as we can. We that's the kind of the thing that gets people to go to war, right? Like be an asset to your allies and your kingdom and your side. So we from this battle we took, you know, A, focus on the goal, train the goal, and B, focus on helping your side win. And there's nothing wrong with having passion for doing that. And Wistrick, I'm sure you've seen a lot of that carry down through the years.
Yeah, like as the generation that came in kind of after you guys, I didn't realize that the gate is down is sort of what came out of this battle. But yeah, like the mindset that Atlantia took away from this was, okay, what's the win condition? Do the win condition. And everybody else still throws Atlantia at kill 'em all, turn left, but
That's true.
that's what they learned.
All right, so I'm
They
gonna
just didn't
jump.
get to do it.
I'm gonna jump to Dorinda next. What did Ethelmark learn from this battle, and what can we learn as a larger community going forward?
I think much of what he just said, you know, it's learn that win condition and make sure it gets down to every single soldier who's out there. You know, it's great that the commanders know the win condition, but the people doing the fencing need to know the win condition too. And I think that was huge. And then I think from a melee scenario, I think the whole aspect of we need to practice it, we need to test it and see what's going to go wrong and be willing to change it if it's too complex. So the whole aspect of keep it a little simpler, play test it. We have the Ludovic test here. You run through it with Ludovic, you figure out where he's going to break it, and then you fix it so that we can't do that. And so that's what we do in Ethelmark.
I'm just watching Wistrick's ears perk up. He's like a.
I like breaking
house.
scenarios.
Yes. Well,
All
I'm
right.
sure you are your kingdom's Ludovic. Every kingdom has one.
All right, I'm gonna jump to Arnaz next.
Yeah, I just left because I had to check the timing on something. Do you guys know your Anno Societatis years versus like mundane calendar years? I was trying to put things, I'm looking for XLI, and I'm trying to remember if that was 2007 or 2006.
It's on the SCA webpage.
That's
All right.
2000, no, that would be 40. No, sorry.
39. That was so that was one of my years commanding. I was 39 and 40.
Why does it matter?
Yeah,
So it matters because I was the Rapier Marshal in charge. I was the Trimarian Rapier Marshal, or not, sorry, Trimarian Rapier Commander, 2007. Or not 2007, but where that was XLI.
2007.
Yeah,
That would
okay,
be-
it was 2007. So I wanted to get this correct in my brain because that was the first year that Trimaris won all 3 Rapier War Points at Gulf Wars. And I was the commander for that. And what I took away from this battle was preparation. And the reason why we won those war points was because I came back from Pennsic and I said, when we came back, or I think right before we went to Pennsic, we had our prince and princess went to Pennsic to negotiate allies for that Gulf Wars. And we had a very supportive crown who said, okay, you tell me everything we need to do to win the Rapier War Points. What do we need? How can I support you as crown? How can my squire support you? We got a whole bunch of heavy people authorized to be just marshals so that we had enough marshals on our field. And so the people who had more experience in Rapier melee could fight, and then we had people who were heavy marshals authorized as Rapier marshals so that we could be safe. And I took the importance of communication, the importance of command, and the importance of knowing your scenario and knowing your strengths and your needs with me. And I also took the importance of understanding what's fun for each person, because like
I enjoyed interjecting myself in all of like the command meetings. I enjoyed hanging out at the command meetings and hearing what people were thinking and how they were modeling it in their head. I enjoyed moving the chess pieces on the board and playing the scenarios and trying to break the scenarios and figure out, well, what might they do? What are their strengths and what are their weaknesses? And how can we capitalize on our units? And my king enjoyed that too. And we spent a lot of time just kind of playing that out, and everything from the Pokemon Champions battle to a res battle to everything like that. But I think also what I took from this battle was the idea of what do people enjoy the most on a melee field, and trying to, if you can put them in a situation to do what they enjoy the best, then that's how everybody's happy, and that's how you get the fun, because we're there for fun. And if people are having fun, they're usually going to play safer than if they feel frustrated or upset or things like that. And so, you know, not everybody likes playing melees the way I do. A lot of people like to be like, okay, I'm just going to go kill all the people. I want to run by myself. I don't want to coordinate. I want to do this. And I think as a newer fencer at the time, like that was an important thing for me to learn, an important thing for me to try to pass down was, first of all, this is how you win a battle with planning if you have less skill on the field or less numbers. And then second of all, can you weave in these hero moments or these tasks? Can you find a kingdom that does this thing well and then say, okay, you just go do that kingdom, and that's how you make happy allies. I think that's kind of what I got out of it. So yeah, it formed a lot of my thinking on how we ran the Gulf Wars the next year.
Which it sounds like this battle, as insane as it was really pivotal in you taking charge and command and forming your melee program. So that's awesome perspective. I'm so happy you're here. All right, so we're gonna jump to Dom real quick. Do you have any input? I think I already asked you.
I think he was the first one.
I'm sorry. I have my list. Little too much rum. No, not really. Never too much rum. All right, I'm gonna jump. I'm actually gonna jump to Brighid next, and then we're gonna save Antonio for last.
Okay. So first, really loved those Gulf Wars with you, Arnaz, by the way.
Yeah, that was
good times. Such good times.
You learn when you're in the command structure, like who are the people that, like, literally if you were in an alleyway and you were about to get stabbed, like who would have your back, and more importantly, who would coordinate with you without you having to even look at each other. Like you just know what they're going to do. And that's a magical thing about when you run melees. You don't get that when you run tournaments, when you just fight on your own. When you fight melees, and that's why I love doing melees, like you get to know the people you fight with at a level that is so much different and so much deeper, and you end up trusting them. And you're not trusting them with your life because this is a game, it's a sport, it's for fun. But you do feel that, and you know, it's really fun because like Brighid and I, we're both in Antier now. We somehow both ended up in the same kingdom, and it's kind of cool to kind of reconnect. And I can't wait till you and I can fight together again. Yeah, we need to do that.
So one of the things that I've touched on, several things that were learned, and I'm going to let those things stand on their own. But I feel like there's a really important thing that I haven't touched on yet, and I'd like to talk about. I've actually written several papers on the subject of melee in the SCA. I've written an entire class manual on how to train your units and how to train your army. I've written an entire class on advanced leadership and command. And I've also written, which this paper kind of almost directly started from this point and then forward. I have a 2-page essay on the differences of the Middle Kingdom and the East Kingdom Rapier armies, and what is both good and tragically frustrating about both of them.
Brighid, can you go on like the Fighting the World page and just share links to those, please?
I can. Once you post this, I'll post my links and say, here's the stuff I mentioned. They're on my Google Drive, so I can just share them with anyone. being a commander and ultimately being a general was the most important thing in my SCA and mundane life to a degree for a very long time. And coming out of that, I wouldn't trade it for the world. But one of the things that was really important that came out of this point in time in the mid-realm, and I'm going to speak from the mid-realm here, this particular moment was when we had cross-trained warders to get their spear authorization and knights to get their rapier authorization. And we had gotten to the point where we knew going into this war, we wouldn't have any allies except for like Trimaris and us two. People bringing like maybe 10 to 15 people to the field, and we love them and we cherish them, but there's still only 10 to 15 people. And so one of the biggest ways we could get allies was to encourage a massive crossover program. And so it actually happened out of this particular build up to war. Was we were just rapidly trying to make rapier armor for knights, and knights were rapidly trying to find gear for warders and spears, and I had my spear and I had my armor. And so because we were so used to this culture of not having enough allies, we had built this, the Middle Kingdom Rapier Army is, we are all one. And one of the things that really did a really great job of this, inter-kingdom anthropology-wise, and a lot of people from other kingdoms don't realize this, because the Middle Kingdom isn't a white scarf kingdom, like we're the Order of the Bronze Ring. We had at the same time a great deal of respect from the Britann community, and at the same time a great deal of inequality to the rapier community that the white scarf kingdoms don't necessarily see the same thing of, but at times we often view each other on the same, it's a longer story. I'll leave it at that. But one of the things that,
we can do another episode.
Another episode. But one of the things that really, really came out of this was we earned the respect of the knights. The knights came on the field and we earned the respect of the chivalry. They made a unit and they came out and they saw us and they were like, wow, you guys are trying so hard. You're doing everything you can. You're training as hard as we are at every Kingdom Rapier practice. You are doing everything you can, and we will support you, and we believe in you, and we respect you. And so, like, this was actually the start of this renaissance of the culture in the Middle Kingdom, where we had this Iron Man idea, where we started, it evolved into the Iron Man. It was this thing where we started to encourage people to be together as one army, and it eventually developed in this beautiful mutual respect that was kind of there before, but wasn't as strong. And so inter-kingdom anthropology-wise, this built on the Middle Kingdom's community in ways that I can't describe from any other battle.
Okay.
I think that really plays into some of the discussion we had earlier about how important rattan and rapier communication, as well as communication with the royals, etc., is for developing melee scenarios in in the context of Pennsic, in the larger context, in these large scale things. Antonio was our last but not least as our RMIC, and talking about safety and talking about
all sorts of other lessons learned that none of the rest of us got.
You know what?
No.
I'm gonna rewind all the way back to when this all started, and still a piece of me understands the temptation that got us where we were, or where we ended up. You know, if you're dropped into Lankmar, why not play D&D? It sure sounded fun on paper.
But
And, you know, and
It
the
had
answer,
the best of intentions.
and the answer, of course, is Pennsic and Hot and Cranky and everything we've talked about. And Pennsic is not the place for a beer and pretzels tourney, let alone a beer and pretzels melee, let alone a beer and pretzels war point. There's no such thing, and there can't be. I faded out of the command game after this. So I can't really speak to, how the how the Eastern Command staff changed, or I'm the wrong person to speak to that. But I think what we've seen in Pennsic since, both Rapier and Heavy, is we're not enormously changing the battles. We have, you have bridges, you have broken fields, you have open fields, you have the woods, and we'll tweak those from year to year, but we're not trying these novel experiences on the Pennsic field.
So, actually, speaking from Hawk and I are co-Armix at Gulf Wars next year, and then after that, it's my job. And as people may have gathered, I love this map. I loved my experiences on it because I was just chaos. It was great. Run around, kill people. Hearing your lessons learned from it gives me, like, maybe I don't need to have a 20-room town battle, no matter how much I would love to have that, because
9 rooms and 3 things would be just less chaos.
Well, and would scale for
the
Gulf.
9-room town battle, and it was not good.
6.
Yeah, 6. And the other thing is that you have to remember that not everyone is going to enjoy the same thing. And that was a big thing. So something that, is going to make me go, oh my gosh, there's this complicated scenario and I can move my pieces and make it win, is the kind of thing that honestly, Sylvain's like, okay, well, yeah, I can do this, but I just want to go punk people in the head. And, so it's just like, when you create scenarios like this, if you can create pockets where what'd you say?
I think the answer is to make sure you don't over-engineer the scenario to where playing the scenario overshadows the fighting.
Or at least create pockets where you can just get a straight off line fighting.
Decided by the fighting, not the scenario engineering.
I disagree, Dominic. I think that it's still good to have an idea. If you can still win, even if you're outnumbered, like, a lot of times it does come down to numbers, and it's charming to think that there is an idea that we could still engineer a scenario where fighting isn't the only thing.
But we're not out here to engineer, we're out here to fight.
That's what tournaments are for, Dominic.
Unless you're in the command staff. Then you're out there.
If you're in the command staff, that's what you want to do.
Picking it apart.
Built the Atlantean command staff. We're still trying to get to the fight.
But I think that brings up the point of balance. Like, if maybe you don't want to change the scenarios in the middle, but if you have like one field battle that is engineered and the other field battle is just kill them all, then you get chances for both people to shine. And I think that's really important.
Sure,
I think the fact that kill them all was scenario number 2 and none of us cared to remember it says that was just not meaningful enough. Like, but it was just kill them all. That's fine.
Well, and we're back to Arnaz's first point, which is we can't please everyone in planning our scenarios and planning how we do these things at any war, whether it's Pennsic or Gulf Wars or Estrella, etc. I think that this is awesome because it plays so much into what Wistrick and I have done in previous episodes. I saw Wistrick, I saw his ears perk up while we were discussing this just a little bit because we've talked about scenario planning and marshalling. But I wanted to kind of cap it there before we got into the deep philosophical questions about what is important on the melee field.
Can I say one last thing?
Okay.
Just one, though.
One last thing, I promise. I'm sorry I talked too much. I know I say we do not talk about the D&D town battle. It was one of my favorite battles. However, there was so much drama ensuing as a result of it that it caused it to be not my favorite battle anymore. And I appreciate that we did get a chance to talk about it. And so thank you for having us on the show.
that's where I was going. I was about to say, I wanted to thank everyone here. We got so many perspectives. We got small units. We got newbies who have just been to Casa Bardici. We got big kingdoms, and we got the RMIC, which is fucking cool. And I wanted to say thank you.
Antonio.
Thank you guys. Mission accomplished. Foretelling drunken Pennsic stories on the last night of virtual Pennsic. Yeah, you can hear Trap making mine in the back, the ice clinking. And I just wanted to thank all of our audience for being here as well. I think Wistrick wanted to end the recording, and we were going to hang out for a little bit longer for some of the stories that were a little too spicy to show. And
watching the video, nothing cool happens after right now.
Right, now